Hi, Elil. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. We're really excited to have you on and to learn about your different insights and your career journey. So, I wanted to start off with the first question and ask if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your educational journey, and your career path.
So, thank you for having me. My name's Elil. I'm currently working as a senior consultant at CAPCO. They are a boutique consulting firm with offices all over the world, and we currently specialize in the financial services industry. Prior to that, I worked at Bank of Montreal for about 5 years, did dabbled in a little bit of financial reporting, financial analysis, and then also investment management. And then prior to that, BMO was my first job outside of undergrad. I completed my undergrad at Queen's in life sciences, actually. So, very different from what I'm doing right now. But through my studies, I slowly realized that probably medicine isn't the right path for me. And so after I graduated, I gave myself a year to kind of figure things out before applying to pharmacy school. And during that, I started working at BMO, started off as a client services representative for their investment management line of business. And while I was working there for the year, I realized how interesting everything was because it was so different from science and biology and everything that I studied before. And it was more numbers based, it was more problem solving, a little bit more strategic, and a lot more people facing, which I realized I enjoyed a lot. So I decided to stick through and kind of figure out where things would take me. And so I stayed with BMO in the investment management position for a little bit, where I worked with institutional clients. You know how companies have like group TFSAs, group RRSPs. And so we helped sort of manage their portfolios, processing trades, doing account reconciliation. And that line of business was acquired by another firm. So I transferred over to the financial reporting and financial analyst sort of role where I reviewed the financial statements along with the support of a whole bunch of other colleagues, where we consolidated, put together the financial statements actually for BMO's retail investment products. So that would include their mutual funds, ETFs, and I think also some private investment products as well. And there I was exposed to, more on the analytical side, understanding how there are so many different types of investment products, what they're made of, because it's not necessarily just, investing in one thing and waiting for your money to grow, but actually how that fund operates, what their investment profile is like. And then I was also introduced to the internal audit function. So we worked with a lot of third-party auditors, like KPMG, PwC, where we collectively audited the financial statements before submitting them to the regulator. And so it was a lot of interesting work that I was doing there, but then I felt like I had reached a ceiling because, my background was in science. And so I thought, what can I do education wise to sort of bolster myself to advance my career? And that's when I went back to Queen's and did my master's in finance for a year full time. And I was working full time at the same time. So it was a lot of work, but it was definitely worth it because I learned so much about so many different things. And I use that to sort of leverage myself to apply for other jobs. And that's where I landed myself at CAPCO in consulting. I was actually applying for a financial analyst role at CAPCO,
Oh,
but it turned into a consulting interview where I had to do case study, interview prep, and so forth. And luckily, they thought I was a good fit. And so I was happy to try something new. And I realized that there were some parts that were similar between what I did before at BMO and what I did in consulting. And there was a whole lot of other things that school really prepped me for. And I think it was
that's great.
mostly the communication side of things, dealing with clients and learning more about how firms, businesses operate. So that was all really helpful. And I've been at CAPCO for it'll be 5 years now. And
Wow.
I know it's getting there. And I'm really enjoying what I'm doing at consulting. So I'm glad I found myself here.
That's great. It sounds like you're doing amazing. And It sounds like a wonderful place to work as well. So you mentioned that you started off as a financial analyst. So I was wondering, what's the biggest difference you believe in being a financial analyst versus a consultant and anything else related to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great question because I think for people who are in finance, I think financial analysts or consultants are one of the two diff pathways that you think about taking. I think the biggest thing is probably the amount of exposure to other clients that you have in the consulting side. I think depending on the type of work that you do, it could be the same work because there are so many different types of consultants
Yeah.
and there are so many different types of projects too. So I would say my first consulting project was very, very similar to a financial analyst role. I was doing financial modeling, budgeting, forecasting, analysis. The only thing though is that in a regular financial analyst role, I'd be working in the corporate services function, presenting to internal stakeholders. And versus in consulting, I think you're working with external stakeholders, your client. And I think the biggest thing is that the work that you do is part of trying to solve a problem for the client. So you're a part of the puzzle. And you also think about how the work that you do can help solve a problem for the client.
I've always heard the term that consultants are like doctors in business. Would you agree with that statement?
I would say, in the sense of being very generalized, because you get exposed to so many different industries, different line of businesses, you have to be able to quickly get up to speed on how the different companies work, how the different line of businesses work. So you become very generalized, which I think is where the doctor's comparison comes from. I think everyone has their special niche, like expertise that they kind of have in their back pocket if situation ever comes across. But yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. What initially attracted you to that finance career?
I think it was the way the numbers could do storytelling. So the financial modeling aspect of it and reviewing the numbers and making sure that everything tied out. I think the fact that it was used to either solve a problem or whether it was to tell a story. I can give you two examples. So the first one is when I was working at the bank and when we are helping to review the financial statements and we're making sure that everything reconciles, and if we're not able to reconcile the numbers or the notes to supplement the table, which a lot of people kind of forget about in the financial statements, you go back and try to investigate, being like, why is this not matching? What's the gap? And then you understand, oh, and it gets bigger too, because it might be impacted by a political event, depending on where the fund is located, or like a natural event too. So there's so many external factors that can impact the performance or of how a company is doing, and the numbers are the best way to see it. And so sometimes you feel like a detective trying to solve a problem.
Yes.
So I like that about it. Yeah.
It's like fun almost, like trying to figure out how to escape room.
Exactly. You're literally trying to find the key to the door to open. And the door is pretty much making sure that all of the numbers tie out. And then there's a lot of clues, a lot of missing pieces, but then that's where you try to investigate, figure out what's going on, and then make sure that everything is reconciled.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy as well. Has there ever been a huge event that has made a big difference on the numbers and you've been able to figure that out and been like, wow, I imagine maybe COVID-19 was one of them?
Actually, no. Well, it would have been really cool to see how COVID affected the statements, but I left BMO, I think just the year before.
Oh,
I
okay.
remember there were some incidents where I was reviewing the notes of the statements and just noticed that the numbers didn't match. It's been a while, but yeah, the numbers didn't match. And I just remember reaching out to my colleagues, to the portfolio managers, asking, being like, hey, this isn't matching. The auditors are inquiring into this. Can we figure this out together? And it was just a lot of pulling. And I think it came down to, I think 2018, 2017. I know Europe was pretty unstable. I think there was Brexit happening. There was also a lot of instability in the pigs economy. So, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, where there was a bailout that was happening. So, a lot of that influenced some of the listings that we held in the fund that I was investigating. And so, doing that deep dive, trying to figure out, and then finally having an answer to why the numbers were portrayed this way was pretty satisfying because, like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, like it's not just numbers that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there and earlier about how numbers can tell a story. They're not just there for the sake of being there, but it's important
Mhm,
to think about
mhm.
how they connect with other numbers or like bigger trends at stake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And could you tell me about a specific project you worked on that you felt was really impactful on you or your company?
Okay, I think I can give two examples for two different types of impacts because I want to reiterate one thing about consulting later on, which I'll get to. So the first one was my first project at CAPCO, which I think was very impactful for myself and the company because I think we were able to win a lot more business afterwards. But when I joined, there was a lot of struggle on the financials. There was an engagement that we had to deliver on, that the bank wanted to deliver on, and they had a timeline that was given to them by regulators, and they had to meet this timeline. But they ran through their budget. They didn't have any funds to continue, and so there was a huge replanning effort when I first joined, and working together with the bank. And I think because all of the financial modeling that I did in school really helped a lot with that. I think it was a portfolio of about 50 million or so, where we were just using that to come up with many different unique ways to be able to make the money last as much as possible. And we were able to deliver a huge project. The project went through COVID as well. So it was a huge shift for everyone was working in person. It was a room filled with about like 50, 60 people, and all of us were forced to be remote. And I think it was really, really impressive how we still all managed to get our work done and deliver. And I just remember that it was really impactful because this is what consulting is about, being able to quick thinkly on your feet. I had to personally figure out, oh, there's this big chunk of money that we need to manage and make sure that it lasts for this duration. And I personally have never really worked on project finance. Previously was more corporate finance related activities, but I realized, oh, I can use what I learned before to apply to this. Second thing about is quickly shifting from working in person to working remote. And I think that both of those things really helped the firm realize that we can deliver very massive scale projects of really good value. And the bank was very happy with our performance. And so we were able to secure so much more add on engagements afterwards. And so I think the first project was very impactful. And the second one was a pro bono engagement. So consultants can also do pro bono work where we work with nonprofits. And I think, when you're working in the corporate world, you kind of realize, oh, I'm not really saving lives, really helping out that much. So what kind of value are we really adding to helping the world? And so I think my first pro bono engagement was very impactful in the sense of, we were working with a nonprofit who wanted to come up with a funding strategy. Yeah, so it was still in the financial sector, providing financial advisory to a nonprofit. So that's why it was considered pro bono work. But again, like how impactful that was, they were going to use that to fund their operations to help more people. And I think it's like,
Sure.
oh, what I can do can also help people. So I thought that was very impactful for me as well.
Yeah, and I think that for a lot of nonprofits, it can be hard for them to get funding as well, and it's their main stream of revenue. So it's great that you were able to help them and increase their funding.
Yeah, exactly. Just because they often don't have access to the same resources that a lot of the big banks do. And so having to provide those services was definitely very fulfilling.
Yeah, that's amazing. And in the end, what kind of results were created in either of those
Either
projects?
of those. Okay, so for the client engagement, I think the biggest one is that we were able to win a lot of business. I was able to grow my career. So I got promoted from that project and also learned a lot about sales and contracts and a lot about more about deal making, which I think is a little bit different than financial analyst jobs, where you kind of learn about how to pitch projects, win money, and sort of the negotiation. And so, again, I think my learning was exponential on that part of the aftermath. And then with the nonprofit, it was more of giving them a sort of a pipeline, being like, engage and implement these sort of recommendations that we provide to you. And they gave me their financial statements. And so it was more of, using how their operations are and providing forecasts for them, being like, if you apply these recommendations, we expect that your revenue would expect to grow by 1x, 2x, 3x within these time periods. And I think they found that very useful.
Yeah, that sounds like a great resource to have. And
Yeah.
I'm sure it was very rewarding for both you and the team as a whole.
I agree.
What skills or qualities would you say are needed to be a successful consultant?
I think the main thing is to be open to change and being proactive and detail oriented. I think one of the biggest advice, the best advice that I got from my colleagues is you put in what you get. And so with consulting, you have to keep your eyes out for the details because that's where sometimes the answers lie. But you also have to be able to quickly switch to the big picture because sometimes you get lost in the details. And so that's where the ability to adapt to change is very important. You're also required to be on so many different engagements, requiring different skill sets and learning different things. And in the earlier years, I was a little bit uncomfortable because, oh, this isn't really related to what I did before. So I don't
Yeah.
know if I can be good at it. But then you kind of realize that there's a little bit of similarities and you stick onto the similarities and try to do the best you can. And a lot of the feedback too, if you're looking at promotions and progressing your career, a lot of the things that they look for is tied to how well are you able to adapt to different environments. And you don't have to succeed right away. I don't think that's what they're looking for. But if you're able to get your feet wet, your hands dirty in a new environment and challenge yourself, I think that's what they're looking for. Because I know a lot of people, we want to stay within our comfort zone,
Yeah.
and myself included, until like people told me, you have to get out and try new things. And the other thing too is remembering sustainability in terms of your own performance. So trying to avoid burnout as much as you can. I think that was a very big reminder for me because in consulting, the other difference too is it's not just the day to day work you do, there's also account work that you do where you work with sales and deals. And there's also community aspect of it too, where you not have to, but you volunteer your time to work on some other business development initiatives at the firm that all feed into your performance reviews and so forth. And one of the things that everyone should keep in mind is like, it's a marathon and not really a sprint. So you have to be tactical about how you manage your time and how you make sure that you also keep some time for yourself to make sure that there's still work-life balance, because work-life balance is very, very different in consulting compared to others. You're very much able to have it, but it's not how you expect it for other industries.
Yeah, on the topic of work-life balance, I actually wanted to talk to you about it because I heard rumors that in consulting you're working very long hours. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that there is some truth to that, but I think it wasn't new to me because in audit, the hours were definitely very crazy. But I think in consulting, the thing is, though, it waxes and wanes. What I mean is when it gets really, really busy, where you're working 50 plus to 60, almost 70, 80 hours a week, depending on how crazy it is. But then there's going to be quiet time. There's going to be times when you can take the afternoon off, or you're able to work at a cafe if you don't have that many meetings. And so it definitely waxes and wanes. You just have to make sure that you take advantage of the quiet time to go on vacation or make sure that you're taking time for yourself. But the rumors are unfortunately a bit true.
Okay, but good to know that you're also able to take that time for yourself when you do need it.
Yeah, exactly. Like luckily with like most firms now, they're very responsive to like work-life balance. I know with the big four, they used to have like, Friday afternoons off for the summer, or like, it's pretty commonplace to shut down during the holidays because our clients don't work that often. So yeah, no, I think work-life balance is definitely feasible.
Yeah, I think the work-life balance in audit in Big Four was something that was also questioned. So I think it's something that's not specific to just one industry, but it could happen throughout.
Yeah, I would definitely say the work-life balance in consulting was a lot better. I remember working on the financial statements in that audit function. I think, it was all-nighters when I was closer to
Wow.
the regulatory deadline, being in the office till very late and then taking a cab home. It was normal practice, but I would say consulting hasn't been that bad just yet, especially now that we can work from home. So, most of us just leave the train, go and take the train home at a regular time, and then we finish our work in the evenings. And then we have a lot of flexibility in how we manage our time.
That's great. Have you ever experienced burnout by any chance, or do you have any strategies for someone who is experiencing that?
So I am pretty sure I have. I think it's very commonplace in the corporate world to experience like varying levels of burnout. I think for me personally, I think it's when I lose my motivation is when I feel like, okay, it's time to go on vacation. Usually around that time, I am, just working through the day, but then I don't feel the passion or wanting to do my best at work. And or sometimes I'm very stressed and I'm having, I wouldn't say nightmares, but dreams about work.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's happened to me before. And that's when I didn't have the proper like burnout management strategies or almost burnout prevention strategies. And I took some time off. I think went on vacation, did some traveling, and then I felt like myself again. And then so nowadays, I think what I try to do is just try to make sure that I have time for myself, no matter how busy it is. Work is work, but health is the most important thing. And so sometimes I have like 12, 15-hour days. And during those times, I think I would try to at least, have some time in the morning before I start my day. Or, even like book yourself a massage, go get a haircut, or, do things that you
Fun
enjoy,
little things in life.
fun little things that, because they add up. Because sometimes you might not be able to take your vacation for the next little while because it's busy season. But if you wait until then, you might get extremely tired. And so little things every day really help.
And I think it could be even better if it's something that you're passionate about doing, because
Exactly.
then you're motivated to actually stay throughout the long hours.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think what's definitely helped is that at the end of the day, I do enjoy the work that I do. Consulting comes with its, the long hours, no work-life balance, but I think you find a way to work through it. And I definitely wouldn't still be here if I didn't enjoy what I was doing.
Yeah, great. And I know there are a lot of students who are interested in a financial analyst as a career or a consultant. So what advice do you have for them if they want to pursue a career similar to yours?
I would say network as much as you can. Attend all of the career events that you have at your school. I know not all universities have co-op, but if you do take advantage of that, a lot of the associates that we hired, whether it was at the bank or at the firm, they had previous co-op experience, which was really helpful on their resumes. Otherwise, I think just have a very strong resume where you did a lot of case competitions. I think
Yes, ma'am.
case comps are a huge thing for financial analyst jobs, consultant jobs. I think even for my interview, even though I switched to consulting, I would say somewhere in the middle of my career,
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to do case comps during my master's. And I think like all of that gives a very robust resume that it's not just academics, but you are able to apply what you learn. I think case comps are extremely helpful. But the most important thing is networking, going to the career panels, introducing yourself, even reaching out to your LinkedIn network for coffee chats. I think that's the most important thing about becoming successful in finance or consulting.
Yeah, that's great. And would you say that when reaching out for these coffee chats, how are some ways that students can get a response or increase their response rate?
I think the most important thing is to sound genuine. A lot of the people that we reach out to are very busy, and you want to be straightforward with the ask, but then not be super blunt about it. There is an art to it, but more often than not, people will respond. If it's, introduce yourself, 2 sentences, talk about why you're reaching out, and see if you're able to book some time for a chat. Not to, and I think the most important thing is to not book a chat and be explicit about looking for a job. Because I think most people are not able to immediately give jobs because they're not the recruiter and so forth. But I think if you try to network with the intent of expanding like the people that you know, learning more about the industry that you want to specialize in, a lot of people are very open to it. I can be sure of that. Like people are very receptive to that. I think as long as you're sincere, friendly, and not follow up too much.
Yes, I know some people who maybe follow us every week or something, and it's just, it can get quite overwhelming.
And I would say the most important thing is to not get discouraged because, some people won't respond or some people will say that, they're not interested in doing a coffee chat, but there are a lot of people who are willing to listen to help provide mentorship or guidance. And because I understand that it can be intimidating when you're first starting your job hunting and like entering the corporate world.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that what really resonated with me with what you said is the importance of not going into that chat with the intent to get the job, but the intent to just learn more about the industry and the person. And I think that can pay off exponentially.
You hit the nail on the dot. I think people like to talk about themselves. So when you frame the conversation on trying to understand their journey, what their advice would be, how do they like their job, what do they do to get there, that sort of information, I think that's very valuable. Within those conversations, they might be able to be mentioned, reach out to this person. They can probably help you with this specific question that you have or something. But I think entering with a very open mind framework and just a learning mentality can, like you said, exponential rewards.
Yeah. Amazing. So hopefully now the everyone have a lot of tips and feel more confident in their preparation. Are there any other tips you have for the interviews with the financial analysts or the consulting? Would you say that, for example, technical preparation is necessary at all?
Yes, yes. Technical preparation is very necessary depending on the type of financial analyst role that you want to do, because not everything would require modeling. But I've done a corporate banking interview where we had to do financial modeling. Then
Wow.
another one where it was in real estate, so commercial real estate, where it wasn't modeling, but I remember it was a worksheet of questions where you had to have some real estate knowledge to be able to answer the technical questions. So definitely be wary of the job description and kind of anticipate what type of technical questions they would ask. What I ended up doing afterwards, even before the technical round, is I would have a portfolio. So for corporate roles, especially the more senior you are, your portfolio not only comes from your, I would say, modeling or financial analysis skills, but also how you're able to communicate your analysis. That is business friendly. And so being proficient in PowerPoint is a very huge thing. And so, like, I remember having just a portfolio document with like my financial models, my PowerPoint presentations, analysis,
Okay.
everything. So they kind of have like a repository to look through, being like, this is what I've been able to do, what I can do. And then you're able to, have some more substantiation to your technical round, because technical round, sometimes you'll do well on it, sometimes you won't, depending on the day, because nerves get in the way, so
Sure.
forth. Right? So you want to prove it to them that, maybe if this was an off day for me, I'm still able to do this. This is work that I'm proud of. And so definitely having that would be very helpful. But technical interviews, you won't be able to skip them.
Yeah, I think that's very important because it's a portion that can intimidate a lot of students and job seekers.
I would say the more you do, the more you get used to it, I think. And then after a while, the interviews also sound pretty familiar. They might not be the same questions, but the theory behind it, for
Mhm.
example, calculating the financial statement ratios, calculating if it's an investment banking interview, calculating the valuation of it, completing a discounted cash flow model, like all of that will be very standardized. And the more practice you do, the better you'll get at it.
Yeah, that sounds like great advice.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, you mentioned that, for example, when you're doing your technical preparation, you might have to prepare financial models. And I imagine this is also something you might have to present to clients. What are some ways that you concisely persuade them if this is something that they might not understand?
That's a really good question. I think this experience comes from the case competitions, which is why I really recommend students or anyone who is still in school to do as many case competitions as you can, because the ones that I did were around investment banking. So we had to do financial modeling. So, and I'll give an example of one I did where it was in partnership with Canaccord Genuity, an actual firm that's working in downtown. We had to provide a pitch of a potential acquisition target for them.
Oh, well,
So,
that's really important.
yeah, so we not only do we have to find a company that would be worth for them to invest into, obviously the people who we would be presenting to are not going to be close to the numbers or the analysis.
Yeah.
And so we kind of had to take a step back and pull back and say, okay, you have this really giant Excel. Let's go through it and highlight all the numbers that are impactful to our thesis, or like why you should buy this company. And so you would go to the bottom line, you would think about the valuation, the synergies, any cost savings that you find from the valuation and the modeling that you do, any financing costs and so forth. So you would highlight those, put them into a very digestible table on a PowerPoint. Doesn't have to be complicated, but it can't be a full Excel table on a slide.
Yes,
You
yes.
have to sort of think about it from a storytelling perspective. And that's where it comes down to understanding the company, why they need to buy it, not from, oh, you're going to make more money if you do this, but it's going to save you money. It's going to improve your revenue in this line of business. It's going to save you costs here. And so it's all comes down to the storytelling. I'm sure for students who are interested in finance or consulting, the courses that they are taking probably already have like a communications course. I would really recommend them to take advantage of it, because that some of the stuff that I learned on how to make good PowerPoints to tell analysis to very senior stakeholders, I still use to this day.
That's great. And I think that I agree with you. If it was just the whole Excel there, it's just too much. You don't know where to focus on.
Exactly.
In terms of the future of consulting, where do you see this headed?
I think with consulting, and I can only comment on within the financial service industry because that's the domain that I worked on. But I think there's been a huge push in digitization 2019 till now. It's definitely slowed down because of the higher interest rates. The banks have curbed their discretionary spending, but it's going to pick up again. And I think with AI and machine learning coming into play in the last couple
Yeah.
of years, it's trying to learn how to leverage AI to provide more meaningful insights to our clients, how we can leverage AI to save more money or bring in more revenue. I think those are the use cases we're trying to think of. Consulting is also expanding, not upon your typical business transformation projects or strategy projects, but a huge piece of sustainability from a climate change perspective, from ESG. That's been a very, I would say, controversial slash hot topic word in the industry the past couple of years. And there's been a lot of focus because people are very concerned about the environment, and not just from a climate change perspective, but also from politics and so forth. And so there's a lot of focus on that. And I think consultants are trying to build a presence there. But I think the main driver of all of this, I would say, is AI. Trying to build out virtual assistants if you're in the tech space, trying to use data insights if you are in trying to optimize how you leverage your data. My personal stance is AI is going to become really big, not in the sense of it taking over, but I think in terms of improving efficiency in especially in the data space on how businesses use the data, because oftentimes they're in tables from so many different places, and it takes a lot of minds to consolidate and bring everything together to make your analysis. With AI and machine learning, you can have everything in one place, make it much more easier to pull out the very informative insights that you need to take it one step further. And so I think there's going to be a lot of work in that space in the coming years.
Yeah, I think AI is something that's growing at a rapid rate. I don't know if you heard of ChatGPT, which everyone uses. So, would you say that AI allows you to kind of focus on the more impactful tasks while it takes over more of the mindless or routine tasks in a way?
I would say so, yes. Yeah. I think with especially like ChatGPT, I think a lot of us use it definitely from thinking about from note taking all the way to designing PowerPoint slides. Like they're able to do so much now that, it brings your brain from working on those, I would say, mundane tasks to trying to solve the more complex puzzles. Definitely. I know maybe not in consulting yet, but I know in some of my colleagues who are working in the tech space, ChatGPT is already integrated into their workflows. And so
Wow,
they
super
use
cool.
it for taking meeting minutes, for helping to design PowerPoint slides. And it was saving you time to do your actual work, which is helping to solve a problem. And so I can definitely see that crossing over into consulting.
Yeah, and I think 50 years ago, we wouldn't have thought something like this would be possible, and now it is. So
Exactly. Yeah.
really interesting and
Mhm.
amazing the things
Yeah.
that we're doing. Speaking on that theme, you mentioned CSR. I think it's something that's also really big. I see a lot of companies talking about their sustainability strategies. So, when you're providing your recommendations to your clients, is there ever a conflict between making them the most profits or losing profits but focusing on sustainability?
That is a really good question. And I would have to be honest in the sense of, especially within the banks, just yet, I think sustainability is in their back pockets. But I would say, I think the most important thing for them has been how to bring the most value to customers, which of course improves their bottom line. When it comes to the recommendations that I would provide, I think the business benefits, we collectively come up with it together. Most often, businesses will have a problem and they send out RFPs to a whole bunch of competitors, consulting firms, where they ask you to come up with the solution. And then the business itself reviews all of the proposals and they end up going with the one that give you the most bang for your buck, essentially, where they don't have to spend as much money, but they're getting sufficient benefits. Those benefits can be anywhere from increasing customer value, reducing costs, increasing revenue to the business. Sustainability is not something that has been factored into my or our personal recommendations just yet, but
Okay.
it's all in the back of our minds. And like
Yeah,
for ourselves, like in all of the big four and the consulting firms, sustainability and how we're marketing that and how we're trying to build that into our clients' decision making frameworks and so forth is all coming together. And so in a couple of years, I think it's going to be part of our recommendations.
that's great to know and amazing to hear about. Last question I have, we're almost there,
No
is
worries.
what would you say are your long-term career goals in consulting and how do you plan to achieve them?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, my long term career goal in consulting is to try and see where my cap is. Because I think how it works in a typical firm is, you work your way up to a partner or you exit the industry and you enter into a director or senior manager or even higher type of role in the industry that you specialize in, for example. I think for me, I haven't put my mind to where I want to be in terms of do I still want to be in consulting or do I want to exit the industry? I think for now, long term, I want to just continue doing what I'm doing. I definitely enjoy the sales aspect of consulting, the deals, the contract negotiations aspect of it. And so I think if I were to have the opportunity and the privilege to continue working as a consultant and seeing how far that can get me, I think that'd be very fortunate to do so. But then I think the great thing about consulting is that the exit opportunities are really endless. I feel like some people might think that they might feel trapped. They kind of just have to stick with this for the rest of their career, but you can always exit out. You're equipped with so many general skills across the business field that you would be successful anywhere that you sort of exit into. And I think that's sort of the message that I want to give is that the exit opportunities are endless. For me personally, again, I think I want to stay in consulting for as long as I can, see where that takes me. Definitely want to be able to win some more deals, maybe even become the lead of a practice at a firm or something like that, and try to learn as much as I can about the way the whole consulting industry works, I think is probably my goal.
That sounds amazing, and hopefully you're able to achieve all that in the next few years.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Eli, for joining us on our podcast. It was amazing learning about your career journey, your different skills and qualities you think are need to be successful, and future trends you see emerging. Really enjoyed our time and wanted to thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. This is really great. And thank you so much for having me.